Hello, my name is Codemaster Jamal and I'm an indie game developer. In today's video, I will be discussing how I made 3 albums for my indie MMORPG, Virtual Monsters, and why I chose to make the music for my game myself versus buying the legal rights to music online. It's been a long time since I made a devlog for Virtual Monsters. Unfortunately, this devlog isn't necessarily an update for the game, meaning I don't have any new features to show off, but I will be putting a few things here or there throughout the video to keep you guys interested. I've been very adamant about finishing my game before releasing any more devlogs, and this is merely because I've seen too many copies or similarities between my game and some others. Some people have decided to take their games down, but it still kind of stings me. Overall, when it comes to devlogs, it's best to finish your project before making a devlog because people are going to be influenced by your game regardless if you finished it or not. So you only have a limited amount of time to actually release your game before somebody decides to make the next one, which is why at this point I stopped trying to one-up Pokemon. Not that I was ever trying to do this in the first place, nor was it my intention to begin with. I can never outdo Pokemon. You're talking about a billion-dollar company versus like one guy. So, and it was never my intention. People have brought a lot of things to my attention saying that, I ripped off Pokemon, but there's a lot of things I want to talk about in this video, so I will take the time to discuss a number of topics. If you have any questions that you would like me to respond to in the form of a video, please make sure to leave them in the comment section below. Without further ado, let's jump in. This is a Virtual Monsters devlog. I would say what number it is, but at this point I kind of forgot and I stopped counting. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is why I chose to make my music. In terms of video games, what actually got me into video games will be, I was a little baby at the time, so my older brothers had a Sega Genesis, and I would play with them. They would play like games like Mortal Kombat and that type of thing, a 2-player game. I would play with them, and I'd be the one, they would give me a controller and it wasn't plugged in. I didn't figure it out until I was, until I was a little older. When I say older, a few seconds older. That's how they treated me, but it's not a big deal. But a lot of the reason why I got into video games is because of a game called Jet Set Radio. It's very funky, very hip-hop influenced, very jazzy. I like that style of music. So that's what got me into music at first. I made another video about how I released music over the past decade. I'll leave a link to it here within this video. Hopefully both these videos will link back and forth to each other, so you'll be able to watch both videos in unison. This video is mainly about how I released 3 music albums within 1 year. And basically the point of me releasing 3 albums is that I was really influenced by System of a Down. At some point, they released the album Hypnotized and Mesmerized within the same year. So I was trying to do a double album as well. And a lot of the reason why I chose to make my own music was simply put because I wanted it to feel like its own game. I could always get music online, which I will do for other games, but I wanted this game to feel like its own world. And a lot of Pokemon aesthetics is that they have their own music. They have their own musicians. They have their musicians are influenced by different artists and different people. People do things differently. And thus, Pokemon is a different game from Digimon. There's different composers for Pokemon and different composers for Digimon. Digimon's more like rock and roll, more metal, versus Pokemon, which is more like jazz and classical. In later games there are some rock and roll influences, but in earlier games it was more classical music than anything. And especially when you look at Generation 4, that generation of games, it becomes very like jazz influenced. But I mainly chose to make my own music in order to give my world an aesthetic. I kind of regret it to a certain degree. I really regret it because it's taken a lot of time. Honestly, nobody actually wants to work on Virtual Monsters with me. Most people just kind of want to scam me out of things, so I stopped caring about it. And basically, if I make my own music, I get to pinpoint what I want people to hear when they're playing the game. A lot of it has to do with the virtual world concept. Like the real world, basically it's more like, I would say more traditional music, more classical themed. It's more like jazz and old school rock and roll, a lot of old school funk, a lot of old school music versus the virtual world, which is more futuristic. You have more EDM, you might come across some heavy metal, you might come across some trap music. Once again, the difference is that in the real world you have hip hop, but in the virtual world you have trap music. This sort of mix. I made a new genre making the soundtrack for this game. A lot of that really came out in Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 2. I made that album with absolutely no flaws, and I'm really happy about that. That came out perfectly. I hit every note in the right place. It came out perfect. I'm really not too proud of Part 3 because there's some things I'll talk about later on within the video that I messed up on. A lot of it because I was rushing to get it finished within a year's time period, and I didn't spend a proper amount of time actually listening to the album before I actually released it, because currently I don't actually have a place to actually listen to my music outside of my car. guitar. Off of my laptop and off of most speakers, it sounds pretty fine. But when I started listening to it in my car, I realized there were certain frequencies left within the bassier side of things. There are certain sounds that just made it sound awful. There's even some songs where I realized I should have slowed it down a tad bit before speeding it up. So that's why I chose to basically make my own music versus use something that's already made. And generally speaking, anybody can go and buy that album. Even if I decide to use assets off the Unity asset store, I still want my game to have some aspect to it because imagine like most of the assets can be bought online, the music can be bought online, the sound effects can be bought online, the textures can be bought online. If everything for my game is bought online, what makes it unique? And I decided, since I started out with music first, the only reason why I got into music in the first place was to make music for video games, and I ended up being sidetracked for like 6 years playing in bands and like side projects and those type of things, that I finally decided to go ahead and get cracking with video games, and that's why I'm here now. So that's why I decided to make the music myself. Even if I hired another musician to do that type of thing, they still wouldn't be able to pinpoint a particular sound. Like the sound that I finally was able to craft the sound that I was looking for, basically. And that was the whole reason why I decided to make the music myself, was that I'm trying to craft a specific sound. And I finally got the sound that I wanted, and that's why I'm really happy. And that's basically it. Next, I'd like to talk to you what influenced me as an artist. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I say things like television first. Television is actually what got me into like music first. The soundtrack for Jaws, the bum 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 bum. Yeah, that song, that actually got me into music. A lot of older African American or black artists, like a lot of 70s R&B, a lot of 80s music, a lot of music from the 90s. Kind of stereotypical, but yes, things like Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube actually got me into music. A lot of Bob Marley. That's what got me into music. A lot of reggae, ska. Like I didn't get into like rock or punk rock. I wasn't really into punk rock, but like, I still played it a tad bit. But what got me into rock and roll, I wasn't into rock and roll until I got into high school. So like, I actually used to hate rock and roll. So it's kind of interesting. I actually even became a bass player in like a heavy metal band, because like I used to hate rock and roll, but I think that's mainly because those were my ignorant days. It's mainly because like no reason. I guess I was like, I don't know. I guess I was like, if you're really into rap music, man, but that's why all this messed up stuff happened to me, where I'm getting bullied by other rappers and stuff like that. But it's fine. It's fine. But that's why that stuff happened to me. I ended up getting bullied by rappers and stuff like that. I sold out. I used to rap. I used to be a rapper. It's kind of interesting. But I wasn't like a commercially released rapper or anything like that. But that greatly influenced me. I was really into Outkast. Outkast is like the main group that influenced me the most. Big Boy and Andre 3000. So like that really influenced me a lot as well. That's what really influenced me, was Outkast. Even that song, Hey Ya, Hey Ya, is a lot of that. And I also spent a lot of time in church, and I like church musicians. I like church music. Church music actually influenced me a lot. So like gospel music is actually like a huge influence on me as well. Gospel music, I would also say a lot of jazz from miscellaneous artists. When I say jazz, I'm used to seeing musicians play on the street corner. So like I can't even say that, a lot of like Latin music, Latin jazz, a lot of that type of music influenced me. But this is before I became a teenager. I went through puberty, and I began to change. I became an idiot like everybody else. I got into like stereotypical things like Slipknot. Who is it? Gucci Mane? Who's into Gucci Mane? Stereotypical things like what's coming out. Lil Wayne. I was still into like my side of things with stuff like Lupe Fiasco. I was into like a lot of Lupe Fiasco. Let's see, what else was I into? I was into a lot of different things, but basically as I became a teenager, a lot of it had to do with like social environment. Because my family had money, I was typically like, I was looked at as like the black version of Rich Rich. And it's kind of stupid because like I don't like talking about it, but basically I got kind of like kicked out of like black activities. I still hung out with other black teenagers, but we were nerds essentially. We were into video games, we were into anime and those type of things. But that's all it was. We were nerds. But I saw what happened eventually. They got thugged out, and I kind of stuck with it. I stayed a nerd essentially. I beat a stereotype, but no, it wasn't a good thing. in the long run, it kind of like ruined who I was as a person. But at this point, I just kind of stuck with it. I wasn't hood enough to be a rapper, essentially. So like I couldn't keep rapping. And it's just that I've watched a lot of people go to jail. I watched a lot of people like you've seen dead bodies and that type of thing. Like you've seen like people get stabbed and that type of stuff. So like ghetto nonsense, like you pray to Jesus and you just don't want to mess with that type of stuff. But that's why I kind of like diverged away from hip hop, that type of thing, of like my environment. Like they forget like rap music's different when you're actually living in the ghetto versus when you're living in the suburbs, and you don't have people like smoking crack. Like you go to a gas station, you see somebody smoking crack, they got a crack pipe right there, they're smoking it right there. Like he has to prostitute his girlfriend just to make the money for his crack cocaine. Like they probably never went through those type of things in life. So like it's okay, it's really easy to make fun of someone like me who seems like I'm a sellout, or like I'm a disgrace to my people and all these things, but they've never been to those type of areas where like people like it's really bad. Of course those places got better over time, I guess thank God for gentrification to some degree, more or less. Like I don't know what to say about it, but it is what it is. Those are the type of things that influenced me. Like I guess towards high school I got into things like Metallica, Iron Maiden. I wasn't into Suicide Silence at first, but like as I got more into metal, I was into screamo music. So like that's why I got into like the older version of like rock and stuff like that, and heavy metal. Things like Black Sabbath. I got into those earlier forms of metal just because I wasn't too down with the screaming music at first, but I got into it like later on. I found bands like Killswitch Engage. I'm not gonna say Bullet for My Valentine, but I was into Trivium. I was into Bullet for My Valentine, but they're not bad. Like I'm past that part, as because people make fun of other people's music. Oh, I hate this, I hate that. I used to be the same type of person, but as I got older, I matured a great deal. I stopped hating on people's music choices, people choose to listen to. Like what floats your boat gets you to bob your head and tap your feet, and by all choice, go ahead and listen to it. So I stopped treating people like that, especially as I became a musician. I became more conscious of my music. I'll always say this, that my SoundCloud isn't like the best representation of my music or my musical skills or my talent. Neither is YouTube per se. I became more conscious as a musician, and like when you talk trash about other people's music, it really like hurts them as a person. They pour their soul into that. They pour like their spiritual power, their aura, their purpose as a human being is poured into their music. So when you hate on another person's music, it destroys them as a person. So I stopped doing that because it doesn't affect me as much. I guess I didn't care so much. And even now, people say my music is crap. That's fine. It's not their cup of tea. I still make rock songs and stuff like that. That's what influenced my battle music to a huge degree. Like there's a lot of like rock and heavy metal. But I did that for a reason, mainly because I watch a lot of television. I like the theme song for Metabots, Power Rangers, even the Pokemon theme song, Digimon. A lot of Digimon music actually influenced me a lot greatly. I think Digimon Season 4 song actually influenced me a lot. I'm kind of bobbing my head to it, back of my head. But yeah, that actually influenced me a lot as well. So that's just a bit of my music background. I'll try to talk a little bit more about it later. I did go to college to study music. I studied music theory and songwriting in college. I also studied music business, so I learned a lot of the business aspects of music. So I took a decent amount of music credits, just music in general. But I ended up switching my major to computer science, and that's a whole other deal. I took a lot of art classes. I took a lot of music appreciation classes. I took jazz and pop and music in America, which is basically another form of music appreciation. And then overall, over time, I just had a general love for music. And this is just for people that, especially are non-musicians, just think, next time you say, oh, I hate that style of music, or I hate this, just think about it. You're like, people have feelings, bro. People have emotions. We're all human. You're killing somebody on the inside. But let's move on to the next topic. Like, I'm done talking about my influences. I probably could have done like a better job saying like what influenced me as an artist. I used to have like a giant list of like artists that influenced me. I was into like a lot of gangsta funk as a kid, and a lot of it mainly is because I had an older brother. I had an older brother that was into hip hop. He was into Styles. He was into Nas. He was into Jay-Z. So I got into that form of like hip hop and rap. And then I have a middle brother. He's into like stuff like Lil Wayne. I wouldn't say Ludacris as much, but like I got into Ludacris. Also Bone Thugs and Harmony. So I was into like a lot of rap and hip hop. But then I went to school, and people have different ethnic backgrounds. I hang out with the Spanish people. They're into like salsa, merengue, and stuff like Latino trap, reggaeton, those type of things. They hang out with the Caribbean Islanders. You have reggae and calypso. It sounds kind of racist, but like it is what it is. And then you have African American people. Like I kind of listen to the same thing. And then you hang out with the white kids. What do the white kids listen to? They're into like rock and roll or EDM, and that's about it. My next question is releasing my first album. So the first album I released would be Virtual Monsters Part 1. Not Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 1, but Virtual Monsters Part 1, which is basically, it's a 10-song album. If I believe correct, it could be like 11 or 9, but I believe it's a 10-song album. Basically, those were my 10 best songs. I wasn't trying to release it like that. I was actually going to include some rock songs on it, but I was encouraged by family members to make it like a purely hip-hop album, because they only like my hip-hop songs. And that's like my problem now. Like, if you're not making hip-hop, if you're not making rap music, it's like, man, we don't want you doing this. But you know, they forget that, because I spent time playing a metal band. It's like, oh man, they treat me really bad. They treat me so dirty. And they want me to get back to my culture. So they treat me so dirty for being in a metal band. They thought I wouldn't do it. So but I did it, and I just don't care about it. You have to be like everybody else in your family. You know, if they all listen to rap, you have to listen to rap. They beat me down because of that. You know, it's so interesting. But yeah, it's a 10-song album. I would say the most popular songs on that album would be The Mystic Forest and Demitown. They're actually the most played songs on that album. At the time, how do I put this? I built it in LMMS, and originally there was meant to be the Virtual Monsters theme song, Virtual Evolution, and Coliseum Battle it's supposed to be a 13-song album. So those 3 songs were actually supposed to be on that album. I was influenced by people to make like a hip-hop only album, which is why I ended up re-releasing the album with more songs on it. I re-released it in 2024, but if you actually look at it on Spotify and YouTube Music and Apple Music, it says it was released in 2022, because originally that was the album that I meant to release. So like the music industry and a lot of music platforms, you can basically enter the date this album was released, so I can manipulate certain things with time. So even though yes, it was released in 2024, I made it look like it was released in 2022. So like the Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 1. So like remember, there's a difference between Virtual Monsters Part 1 and Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 1, which is the full album, which is I think roughly like 26 and things like 22. It's like 20 something songs on there. The thing about that album is that I included different versions of the songs. So like the thing about Virtual Monsters that I showcased more of what I wanted to showcase in the first place, is that there's supposed to be like a real world version of the songs and then a virtual world version of the songs. And by that point, I started learning how to make alternate versions of my music. For example, there's a version of Lake Infinity that's actually meant for the real world. On that album, for Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 1, Lake Infinity is actually like my most played song. Jazz is very popular. The class is called jazz and popular music in America. Jazz is popular music. I got to basically experiment with making jazz, or like pseudo jazz. I'm not entirely sure. Like they say jazz is a family, so I'm not really a professionally trained jazz musician. I'm not even like an understudy of a jazz musician either. I basically was able to write jazz based on like what I learned in school and a lot of theory, listening to albums, also like looking up certain things on like how to make a walking bass line and that type of thing. I was looking up a lot of different things and researching a lot of different things, and I found a way to put it all together. It isn't real jazz, but it's a form of electronic jazz, and I like it. I wish the drum pattern changed up a tad bit more in the song. I don't have a real drummer. Had I spent more time actually writing the song, it would have been a lot better. But it's still a good song. It's really popular. I actually have over 10,000 plays. I actually have over 15,000 plays for Lake Infinity. On that album, I was able to showcase that there's a real world version of a song and a virtual world version of a song. I was finally able to like finalize that idea that I had before. Prior to that, the thing about making music is that the more songs that you make, the better you become as a musician. Those songs that I made earlier, they weren't great songs, and I understand that. But that's not the point. You get better as a musician over time. You're gonna get good eventually. So even if your first song sucked, don't take it personal. Post them up, show people. I mean, some people only want to put out their best work, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them, because if you're known for making crap songs, nobody wants to listen to you in the future, even if you do start making good music. Always record yourself and just show them. Like, a lot of musicians don't show off like, hey, look, this is how I started playing, and like this is what I am now. They never show you, like, people only want a finished product at some point, but they never show you how things began. I think that's why I kind of like devlogs, so they show like how they start off with things and then like how it ends up finished. So like I've been working on this game for a very long time. It's coming up to the next point where like I'm almost done with the music. I just have to finish up the graphics, and then eventually I can finish up the programming and then package up everything and basically put it on the platform and sell it to you. People have tried their best to stop me from finishing this game, and it's gotten kind of annoying. And there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to do my best best to do what I can, and I'm just gonna move on to the next thing. And you know, I learned a lot of things from re-releasing my first album, essentially, and I guess that's what I'll call that chapter. Is that I was re-releasing the first album, and that's why I ended up coming across like the alternate versions of the game. But I'm going to move on to releasing the second album. On the second album, we have songs that are meant for the virtual world. Where I was more able to showcase a sound that I was trying to make for the virtual world that sounded futuristic. I blended a lot of different styles. You know, you have trance music, you have house music, a lot of different electronic dance music styles, a lot of different electronic styles. I was also more so after high school, I got into like electronic music. I was really into an artist called Mr. Meeble. Mr. Meeble, Dead Mouse also came out. Listened to a lot of Skrillex. Those type of things kind of really influenced me. You know, we always joked about having Project X party at my house, but it never happened. Kind of glad it never did because it probably would have been a really bad thing. I'd probably still be paying off the damages for it now. But yeah, the second album, I was able to show more of the virtual world. When I re-released the first album, which you have the green album, which is what you guys see on the thumbnail for this video. Basically, that album is the official first album of Virtual Monsters. I'm still keeping up the first album I released just because, but that green album is the official first album of Virtual Monsters. There's a different version of the Mystic Forest on the original Virtual Monsters Part 1. I might rename it to just Virtual Monsters. Virtual Monsters Soundtrack Part 1 would be something completely different. Yeah, that just might be it at that point. Because that was the whole point of re-releasing it, is to show like this is what that album was actually supposed to sound like when I re-released that first album. And that's basically it. This is what I wanted it to sound like versus what I was being pressured to release from my friends and family and that type of thing. I'm the only one in my social group that listens to rock and roll. So at least, you know, I wasn't faking it. I wasn't faking it, basically. Yeah, that's basically it. Now, when I got onto the second album, I wanted to showcase more the virtual world. That second album has up to 28 songs on it. I think up to this point, it actually is the album with the most songs on it. And the point of that was I was supposed to release part 2 and part 3 during the exact same year. I managed to do it, even though part 3 wasn't officially released until... The thing about part 3 is that it was released on social media. So you have Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. It was released on social media first, and by the end of 2024, but it wasn't released to things like Spotify and Apple Music and, you know, YouTube Music and, you know, Pandora and all these places until like 2025, early 2025, January 2025. So that didn't happen until roughly like January 3rd or 4th or 5th or something like that. I believe January 6th or something like that. So that didn't happen until that time. But the thing about working in the music industry is that I can pretty much say that this album was released on such and such date. Album was released in 2024, even if it wasn't officially, wasn't. And you can kind of cheat the system. It's kind of messed up. The reason why I really like the second album out of all the albums, out of 1, 2, and 3, even part 4 that's coming up, I'll probably still like part 2 the most because I poured more of my heart and soul into it. I started working with samples. I started showcasing like more of my music. I got more jazz onto it. Jazz really influenced me as a musician. I got more jazz onto that album. I got more of the electronic music. And I got more things done. For example, reggae also influenced me a lot. So there's these songs called Susanu. There's the Lucy Islands. If you look at the map for Utopia, you have the Lucy Islands and you have Susanu and Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. So I believe Susanu and Amaterasu was on the first album. On the second album, I finally released Tsukuyomi, which is like another island song. A lot of these songs are essentially songs that I kind of grew up with. I listened to in church, or I listened to, I'm coming from a place like Miami, a very Caribbean influenced place. So I'm of Bahamian ancestry, and basically my people practice something called the Junkanu. A lot of that is actually Junkanu music. They switched it up a tad bit in the islands, which is only natural. People in the islands today, no, nobody likes their parents' music. I always say that, and it's only natural. It's only natural for people to be like that. I just happen to be a weirdo. I'm just not like everybody else. So like that's just how it is. And that was the thing about the second album. My favorite songs off the second album will be Virtual Beach and Virtual Office. Half the time I only listen to like the second half of the album. And the way how these albums are built is that it starts off with the real world songs first, and then like halfway through the album, especially after like the battle songs, you get into the virtual world songs. Half the time with a lot of these albums, I only listen to the virtual world songs. Like on a daily basis, I listen to all the songs, but like I only listen to the virtual world songs, man, because they're so like crunk, man. They're so like hyped up with energy. You know, I just really liked it. Essentially, they're supposed to be a virtual world version of Mirage Mountain. Basically, I get more into the parts of Virtual Monsters where basically like the reason why I've written certain songs like Big City. Big City is like I actually sampled guitar. There's a guitar sample that I use to mainly write that song, mainly because I have to save for time. So part 4 is gonna be a last album. If I do release any more additional music, there shouldn't be a part 5. Like part 4 is where I should possibly end it. There should be enough music after that point, especially because there's different areas in Virtual Monsters. At some point, because I got stopped from working on finishing my game, that I decided to go all out for it. Like I wasn't going to have like child models. I was only going to have the teenager models within the game, and I wasn't going to have a lot of music for it. There's only going to be Bluetopia. There wasn't going to be a Skytopia. You weren't going to be able to travel to those areas until much later updates essentially. But by the time the game is released, you're going to be able to travel to any of the real world spots. You still have the virtual world, but like basically you'll be able to travel to Neotopia, Skytopia, Dinotopia, Zytopia, Oceanopolis. You'll be able to travel to all the continents in the real world essentially, but I have to make the music for it. So by the time I actually finish releasing this game, there'll be like it'll be a world essentially. I'm building a world versus a video game. So like by the time I'm finished releasing the game, it'll have all the features, including all the monster models, all the monster assets, and that side of it. I'm not gonna be holding back. That's why I always ask people to help me out. If you want to buy some merch to help out, please do so. I'm going to be releasing some more merch. Perhaps I'm releasing some t-shirts with the faction logos, so you can buy your favorite faction logos. I'm also doing some more things to the virtual world outfits. I'm including some more things in virtual world outfits. I'm including some more dressing awesome in the game as well. I'm doing a lot of things for the game. It's not just music necessarily. I will be doing some live streams for you guys and just showing you guys some things. I have it more controlled now. Seeing like a copy of my game out there kind of like stung me a tad bit, but they took it down, but they'll probably put it back up. Who knows? At this point, I want to talk about the third album. Now, the thing about the third album, I'm actually going to show you guys something. Long story short, someone stole my music. I'm not sure how they did it, but basically they got a recording of the song Barbershop, which is on Virtual Monster Soundtrack Part 3. I hate using these very long names. This is why I want to shorten things so bad. It's on Virtual Monster Soundtrack Part 3, Barbershop, which is actually one of my favorite songs, but that's also a song I need to like kind of mess with a tad bit and rewrite. So essentially, they got my song and they put it on distro lock. I was living with my family at the time. Someone could have been recording me, or they could have stole it off my machine. Even now, there's like, I keep trying to make this video about what actually happened to me in 2022, but it keeps going missing for some reason. I have no idea. Some very spooky stuff. No matter how much I try, I can't get it out. So like, I'm still gonna try to do it again. It keeps going missing, but someone stole my music. They just haven't released it yet. I'm going to try to get around it somehow, and then I might actually be able to release it back on my older platform. I had to use a different platform, just release Virtual Monsters Part 3, and that's why I was going through those issues where like some of the songs like they sound like crap because I had to re-export my music. So I had to re-release my music essentially, and I had to make sure it's under certain guidelines before I could release it on that platform versus the other platform. The depth had to be set to a 16-bit integer in order for me to export the songs. So like end up like re-exporting my songs through LMMS, which I shouldn't have done that. I should have actually just used Audacity, which automatically exports it to a 16-bit integer. For Virtual Monster Soundtrack Part 2, I did not do that whatsoever when I released it. There's less depth on Virtual Monster Soundtrack Part 3, and I have to re-release the songs regardless. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that because there's some things I have to redo. There's like when I exported the bass, I redid some things on the bass, and there's like an 808 that's in one song that's not supposed to be there, and it sounds very, very mucky. I was like, why does the bass sound distorted? When I listen to it, even when I listen to it off of my speakers or my headphones, I'm not getting the full sound. I started listening to it in my car. I was like, okay, I need to do some things, but fortunately it's only like 4 or 5 songs on there, and it's like a 20 song album, so it's not that bad. So I wrote that album sort of in the same fashion, and basically Part 3 is just to close up some things on Part 2. A lot of it has to do with the map for Virtual Monsters. For example, there's like 7 to 8 different continents, right? Between Bluetopia, Neotopia, Skytopia, Zytopia, Dinotopia, Oceanopolis, and Oxland. There's literally 7 different continents in the real world that you can travel to. I have to reuse a lot of music, so I'll probably reuse certain songs from Bluetopia and other continents that are a bit more general. So I have to reuse a lot of songs and a lot of music, and that's just general speaking. So like there's certain songs I wrote like big city, small town. Like I can use that within any continent essentially. It's meant to be like very versatile, but then there's like a virtual version of small town. For example, I wrote a song called The Bergs off of Part 2. There's another song called The Villes off of Part 3. Those songs kind of go together, not musically speaking, but in terms of the story. I'll explain it much later when you get to the story part, the story aspect. I don't want to reveal too many things. Like you'll understand like the song, the music a lot more once you game is finished, and you'll see like why I arrange certain things and why certain things are in certain areas, why certain things sound a certain way, and etc, etc. And that's basically it. Now, because of DistroKid, I'm doing something called distro locking. So anytime I make a song, I just make sure I lock it on DistroKid, because I'm using DistroKid to release my music, mainly because it has the option of you can permanently keep your music up. So even after I passed away, basically my music will still be around. This is my immortality in a certain aspect, and that's all I wanted. I wanted this world to remember me, even if this world didn't want to remember me, and that's all it was. For now, I'm basically going to end this video where it is. I feel like I could be talking some more things about virtual monsters and making music. I won't be talking about so much like how I make the music. I will be making videos in the future. Like, I've been instructed by the educational institutes not to talk about certain topics on YouTube. I'm not allowed to teach you guys about music, but I can show you guys certain things when it comes to music. I will be showing you guys some tools I use to write my music. A lot of them are free tools. I'm hoping they stay free, because the moment I show it off, they might start charging a fee for it, and I'm greatly sorry about that, but that's just how things are. Either way, it's been nice talking to you guys. If you'd like to support me, please make sure to sign up for the website. You can also leave a like on this video, share this video, and also subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button on the page, and also think about buying some merch from the merch store. It would greatly help me out as a musician, indie game developer, YouTuber, content creator. I go by many titles, a jack of all trades, I guess you can call me. I have a lot of content I'm working on right now in general. Sorry that my hair is kind of a mess right now. I can't keep it maintained to save my life. Kind of got this pompadour thing popping up. It is what it is. Messy hair, don't care. Keep making games. Till next time, this is Codemaster Jamal, and I'm signing out.